This is Docs Outside the Box, episode 4.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry, you're getting real-life insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nee Darko.
Welcome back to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. My name is Dr. Nee Darko. And you know what? If you've been listening to my previous 2 episodes, you may have noticed that I didn't introduce myself. So yes, the show does have a host. That's me. My name is Dr. Nee Darko. And just wanted to get that out of the way, okay? If you've been a loyal listener, and I know it's only been 4 episodes, but look, if you've listened all the way from episode 1 to now, I'm officially calling you loyal listeners. This show is going to be a little bit different than the past 3. Okay. So what I mean by that is there's not going to be any docs on this show. Don't worry. We're not changing the format officially, but we're going to take a little bit of a tangent and we're going to focus on something that I think you'll still learn a lot from. So I want to ask you guys a question. Okay. How many of you all feel confident enough to say that you're doing okay financially? Like seriously, like if someone by the name of Warren Buffett came up to you and said, hey, listen, let me help you with your finances. You just stop them and say, hey, look, nah, I got this. Raise your hands. I don't know if there'll be that many, actually. How many of you think you know enough about finances to handle your retirement? And what I mean by that is, do you really trust the decisions that you'll make from now until, I don't know, the next 10 to 15 years to make sure that you are financially shored up for the next 30 years? How many of you guys feel that way? And if you do, raise your hands. The reason I'm asking this is I just want to point out and say to those who are answering yes, and everybody point them out and laugh. No, seriously. But I'm confident enough to say that the docs who can confidently say that and raise their hand, I think those are the outliers. Okay. And what I have to say to them is, where did you learn this information? Because obviously they're not teaching this in medical school. All right. I think we all can say, look, the last time we learned anything related to finances was probably math. And that was in college, algebra or physics or calculus. And that has nothing to do with stocks. That has nothing to do with bonds. So think about it. You're spending 4 years paying someone else to teach you how to be a master of the human body. And then after that, you're going to be underpaid for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe even eight years, depending on the specialty that you're going into. And then you're supposed to be making financial decisions on your own. Oh, that quite makes sense. But think about it. After that, boom, you become an attending. And then all of a sudden you're making this attending salary. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, where's my Tesla? Where's my condo? You're allowed to make adult decisions. But seriously, what about the severe lacking in your financial knowledge? So I think the long and short of it is I think we all fall somewhere in between knowing jack squat and actually feeling bad next to the people who have raised their hands to the previous questions. Right. And I think as a result, our experiences, because we spent so much time focusing on the human body and focusing on how to take care of the human body, I think we, as a result, tend to fall back and let other people lead us through some financial decisions that we should be making on our own. Hint, hint. What I mean by that is we go to financial advisors who may not have our best interests at heart. And I'm not saying that all financial advisors are the same. Obviously, they're not. But what I'm saying is we have a tendency to just kind of wash our hands of that information and just let someone else make those decisions for us. And there's no way to know, there's no recourse to know if these decisions that are being made on our behalf are for our best interest or for someone else's best interest. And you know what the saying is? The saying says, nobody else can care more about your money than you. So another question I want to ask you is, do you know what a financial advisor is supposed to do? do you even know how they get paid? I think most people, including me, when I first started out, I didn't even know how my financial advisor got paid. I just thought that, he, helped me buy products and miraculously somehow he got paid, and it didn't come out of my shares, but somehow he got paid. So this all boils down to the big thing is, if you're listening to this show, somehow, some way, the concept of living outside the box resonates with you. Okay. But what nobody talks about is that this type of lifestyle of living outside the box requires, us to be slightly financially independent from our clinical work. All right. You've got to be able to, spend a couple of months or maybe even longer away from our primary duties as a clinician to kind of have the lifestyle that we want. You're going to need a cushion. How do you build a cushion? Some people may call it an emergency fund. How many months do you need? Is it 2 months, 3 months of salary? Is it 2, 3, 6 months of expenses? These are things that we haven't necessarily talked about. These are things that we necessarily don't speak about as physicians with each other. So it's not all gloom and doom. I got you. On this show, I'm actually going to bring on someone who's going to help you make some smart financial decisions. Her name is Katie Brewer, and she's a fee-only CFP, or certified financial planner, and creator of Your Richest Life, which is a financial planning business working and doing work outside of the Fort Worth, Dallas area. She prides herself with working with Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Yers. She's been all over the news. She's been quoted in the New York Times. She's been quoted in Forbes magazine, Yahoo Finance, Marie Claire. Besides, print media, she's also in other podcasts also besides this one, but way more popular podcasts like Stacking Benjamins, as well as the His and Her Money Show. So some things that you're going to pick up from this podcast is, one, I want you to pick up what to look for in a financial advisor. Also, another thing is find out how they get paid. She's going to talk about that, and that's very, very interesting. Find out what's her definition of financial freedom. What's her advice to us doctors in terms of stopping the cycle, breaking the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. She's going to share some pretty good financial doctor mistakes that we all have probably heard of, or if we haven't heard of, you're going to hear of some good ones. And then she's also going to take us back to Financial 101. And what I mean by that is she's going to give us some of the basics on what's the difference between stocks, what's the difference between bonds, IRAs, what's the importance of disability versus term life versus whole life insurance. So look, this is going to be a good one. Get your notebooks, get your recording going on. This is going to be a good one. So let's bring on Katie Brewer. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. We have a treat for you today. Today, we're going to be interviewing Katie Brewer, CFP, and owner of Your Richest Life. Katie, thank you for joining the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we go ahead and start the interview?
Yeah, I'm so glad to be on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm a certified financial planner. So I've got some fancy schmancy credentials behind my name, but I've been in the industry for about 11 years now. Started off more in the brokerage world. Decided I wanted to do more comprehensive financial planning where I got to look over people's entire finances. And so I went into that, and I started my own firm about 1.5 years ago so that I could work with people more around my age, like in their 30s and 40s, being able to give them advice without having any sales or products tied to it.
And that type, what you just said at the last end of your sentence, that is what we call the fee-only approach?
Yes, it is. So there's commission-based, or there's commission-only. There's fee and commission, also known as fee-based, and there's fee-only. So there's actually not really that many of us fee-only financial planners out there.
You guys are like unicorns.
I guess we kind of are, but the ones that are usually are pretty established and have a pretty high asset minimum. So I wanted to be able to fill the space of, people that want that type of advice, but don't necessarily already have $1 million saved up.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about physicians in general, because obviously Docs Outside the Box, we're going to be telling stories here, mainly from the physician's standpoint of living outside the box. But in order to do that, obviously they have to have some type of financial foundation, some type of financial, not windfall, but the portion of finances has to be set before they go ahead and have this lifestyle outside of clinical medicine.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to ask you specifically is the finances of physicians, are they any different than any other professionals, lawyers, teachers, anybody else who's a professional? Are our finances any different?
I think it kind of depends on what specialty that you are in. There are specialties within medicine where you happen to usually do more contracting work. And there are specialties within medicine where you pretty much always work for a hospital or for like a government or something like that. And I think that actually makes a really big difference in how people should be handling their finances. And then for the most part, when you graduate from medical school, I have yet really to meet one person who graduated with $0 of student loan debt. If you're that person, we would love to hear from you. But for the most part,
that person would be a unicorn also.
Exactly. But for the most part, whenever physicians graduate with law, like you go to law school and then you get out and you can actually get a job directly out of law school. So physicians tend to be a little bit different because you've got those couple of years where you might be making like practically, minimum wages or like what a new college grad that's 22 years old would be making before you actually are allowed to fully practice medicine. And
it's okay, Katie. You could say it's slave labor.
It kind of is, but that's what makes it a little bit different than some of the other professions that might have high student loans coming out of school.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that question is, there seems to be a lot of financial advisors or financial advisory companies that claim to specialize in helping physicians financially in particular. What are your thoughts on those financial advisors, those firms? Should doctors be looking to those firms? And that more or less is the reason why I asked that first question, because I've seen it on the web. I've seen it, with different financial advisory companies that have come to different residencies. Some have come to my residency and even to my fellowship and said that, we only focus on physicians. What do you think about that?
I think that anytime that you're looking for a financial planner, that you should do your due diligence. And I think that what makes a financial planner a good fit for you is probably not going to be related to them saying that they specialize in physicians. I mean, they might be a really good financial planner that has your best interests in heart and gets compensated in a way that is in line with your goals. And they might also specialize in physicians. But on the other hand, they might, be mainly hawking really expensive investment or insurance products and say that they specialize in physicians. So I don't think that just somebody that says that they specialize in physicians, that you should be like, awesome, that is a great credential, because it's not. Right, it's really a marketing angle.
Yeah, because I've had a financial advisor that was recommended to me by another physician, and the way how they explain is, that's my guy. Like, well, what do you mean that's my guy? No, that's my guy. He'll take care of you. Well, why is he any different than any other guy? But trust me, he's my guy. And well, what does he do? He takes care of my money and he's got my back. He's my guy. Trust him. And I've experienced, the financial advisors who work and say they claim to specialize in physicians, and I haven't had the best outcome with them. But at the same time, obviously there are good financial advisors out there who probably fall within that realm, and probably bad ones also. But in terms of a financial advisor and a physician looking to work with a financial advisor, what specifically should they be looking for in a financial advisor?
Yeah, so I kind of say that there are 4 things that somebody should look at whenever they're kind of shopping around for an advisor. So the first one is somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. There's a lot of credentials out there in my world for some reason.
It's alphabet soup.
It's totally an alphabet soup. And I would say if somebody's a certified financial planner, they've gone through a pretty rigorous education in different areas of finance.
That would be CFP, right?
Right. CFP. Okay. Yes. Certified financial planner. if somebody is a CPA, they specialize in accounting, but there's also a designation that kind of furthers their education into personal finance. So a CPA with a PFS.
Whoa, PFS.
Exactly. Those people are also, they're probably a little bit more tax focused, but the PFS also gives them some education. And there's kind of a minimum standard and a test that you have to take, as opposed to there are other credentials out there where you could literally take like a class online over a day and end up with some alphabet soup designation. So just kind of knowing what the differences are between those designations is how you figure out that person knows what they're talking about. And then you also want to make sure that they actually listen to you and your goals. So if you go sit down with a financial planner and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know really where my money goes, and I feel like I could be doing better with my finances, and they immediately bust out a sales presentation and tell you about how this particular product can help you. And you know what? I'll go into the pitch here. This particular product can help you because it can give you insurance while also accumulating cash value, so you won't need to budget. It's amazing.
That sounds awfully familiar.
It'll be a savings account and it'll be tied to an insurance. Yeah, you should probably go get a second opinion on that, just in case you've ever had that pitch or in case you're getting that pitch right now. So that's number 2. And then the third one would be that they actually disclose their fee structure. So if you actually sit down with somebody and you say, well, how do you get paid? And if they start squirming or they're just like, hey, I got to eat too, then no, walk out of there immediately. Or if they're like,
What?
I
I think oftentimes I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize. But I think that's really important what you just said, because I think oftentimes you can go through an entire presentation, Q&A session with a financial advisor and never once speak about their fee schedule whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of people feel weird asking about it. But I'm like, why? Why would you feel weird asking about that? Because they've got to get paid somewhere. They're not probably doing it for free. I mean, maybe, but I seriously doubt it.
You're right. I think part of it is, I think from a physician standpoint, I think it's our personalities. I mean, think about it. We're asking someone how much they get paid or how much we want to pay them, but we're so shy to even ask a hospital or even negotiate our own contracts, specific amounts, just because we just feel like we're noble and, we feel like we really shouldn't be talking about money. Our mind should be on should be on patient care.
Right.
So I think within the physician world, we're already shy to talk about our own money. Now talking and asking someone about how much they get paid is just as bad, I think.
Yep, exactly. I mean, you really want to know, especially if somebody says it's free and I get compensated in other ways, then that means that they're a commission-based advisor. And that at the end of the day, they're only going to make money if they sign you up for something. And I mean, if you're wanting to go in there and you're like, I need 30-year term insurance and this is what I want, and I've already decided, like that could be fine. Then you're not relying on somebody to tell you what to do. But if you're going to that person saying like, hey, I've got all these things and I don't really know what to do about them, and they say, oh, well, my advice is free, you probably want to think about how relevant that advice is going to be to your needs versus how they're getting paid.
Buyer beware.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Well, since you opened the door on it then, can you tell us the different ways financial advisors get paid? Like, what are the risks, the benefits of each?
Yeah. So you have essentially 3 ways that financial advisors can get paid. So the first is a commission-only financial planner. And I will say that this used to be a lot more prevalent, but honestly, I don't see that many people that are only commission. Really, if somebody worked for even if they worked for an insurance agency, a lot of times they can get an additional license and do financial planning and charge for it. So commission only would be they don't get compensated any other way other than selling products. So with a fee-based financial planner, that's somebody who has a license to be able to actually charge a fee for a financial plan, but they can also sell products on the back end. So for some people that might be fine, but once again, you need to just think about, if I'm getting advice back, is that advice going to be because it's truly in my best interest, or because that's the product that this person, is getting better compensated for this month, or that, their sales manager is telling them that they need to sell more of this month.
Now, what products do you mean? Can you explain that?
Yeah. So for example, like variable annuities tend to pop up quite a bit with doctors. So a variable annuity from the financial advisor side, they might put somebody in there because you can put money in, and then as it accumulates, you're not having to pay taxes on it. But whenever you take it out, you do. So, but from the financial advisor perspective, they might actually get paid like 5 to 7% on that annuity. And as the person who purchases it, you're never really going to see that unless you decide a couple of years in that you didn't want that annuity anymore. And then you call them up and you're like, I don't want this. And they're like, oh, okay. So you put in $10,000, but you're only going to get $8,000 back. And you're like, wait, hold on a second. So I put in 10,000, but I only get 8,000. And they're like, yeah, that's because it's still in the surrender period, which is, however long. Could be like 4 years, could be 5 years, could be 7 years. I actually, at one point, saw one that was like 20 years. And I was like, I don't know how this is legal, but hey, whatever. So that's something where you would never see the fee that you pay because all of the costs are kind of internal. So they pretty much, the costs within that annuity might take away from how much you get back. Like if the market's doing 10%, but the fees are 2%, then you're really only getting 8% credited to your account. Right. But you're never really going to see that because they're not sending you a bill for that 2%. They're just taking it out of your return.
Okay. And that's, for the most part, how commission-based and also a portion of how fee-based are being paid.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a wide gamut of financial planners out there. So some fee-based planners choose to sell those types of products and some don't. You just have to be able to ask the questions and then kind of have the BS-ometer active in case somebody brings up something and you're like, I'm not really sure about that. Let me go get a second opinion.
So just like patients would go and get a second opinion from other physicians, or even people who are looking for a financial advisor, if your BS meter goes bam, 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 get another opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, compare that to fee-only advisors. Right. How do they get paid?
So fee-only planners or fee-only financial advisors, fee-only financial planners don't receive commissions on things. So usually they'll either charge a per hour fee, a flat fee. They might charge on assets under management. So like if they're managing $200,000 for you, then they might charge a percent of $200,000. So they can still charge different ways. But if, for example, if they recommend that you are supposed to purchase disability insurance, which is something I really do believe in, I think sometimes you guys, doctors, get swarmed with insurance people, and sometimes bad products can come out of that. But a lot of times it means that you actually bought disability insurance at some point, which is something other professions sometimes severely lack. But with a fee-only planner, if they recommended that you get disability insurance, they might coordinate it. So they might coordinate you meeting with an insurance person, or they might refer you to an insurance person, but they don't get a kickback or a commission or anything like that from, selling the insurance, because they essentially recommend it, but they're not selling it. Okay.
So you would charge, or a fee-only advisor would charge an upfront fee, and in essence, you get back advice, and then you as a consumer or as a customer take that advice and do whatever you want to do with it. Decide to take that advice and, put your money in whatever your recommendations are, or, you don't take that advice. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yeah, some fee-only financial planners work like that. I'm actually in a network called the XY Planning Network.
That's a big network, I hear.
Yeah, it's getting bigger, actually. So a lot of the planners in there will kind of work in the way that you described, where they essentially will give the advice, and then if you want to continue working with them, you can. If you want to take it and run with it and try to do it on your own, you can. There are some other fee-only planners where they kind of want you to be, to kind of hand stuff over to them. So like they might say, okay, well, I'll work with you, but all of your investments have to be handed over to me. But the difference between them and the fee-based advisor is essentially there's no like hidden kickbacks or commissions or mutual fund trails or anything like that.
Now, do you find oftentimes that people who are looking for a fee-only advisor, they suffer from sticker shock because there's now this upfront or maybe a monthly fee as compared to people who've worked with commission-based or fee-based? Those fees were kind of hidden, in the products either that they bought or maybe they got charged once a year or quarterly. Do you ever notice people have that sticker shock?
Yeah, I think that can sometimes happen because when you're paying for something and you don't understand how you're paying for it, and then, you decide to go a different route and you're paying for it and you see every dime of what you're paying, it can really be a big difference. I tend to find that people that find me are ones that have already tried to work with a different type of financial planner or financial advisor, and it just didn't go well. Or at some point they had a realization that that person was maybe like pushing something that wasn't in their best interest. And so I think at that point, like people are like, I know what it costs to work with somebody that's not doing what's in my best interest.
That's true. Yeah. So you're almost batting cleanup, basically.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a little bit of cleanup that goes on.
Right. Okay. Now, why would someone need a financial advisor? Why can't they just do it themselves?
You know what? I actually believe that there are people that can do it themselves just fine. In the particular profession of doctors, you guys tend to not have a whole lot of like extra time to hang out and research stuff and to kind of stay on top of things on an ongoing basis. Some people do, but some people don't. So I think the best time to look at hiring a financial planner or a financial advisor is when you feel like you don't have the time or expertise or both to be able to kind of keep everything up and running. Or if you are doing it yourself and you're like, hey, maybe I should at some point get a second opinion on myself. Like you're the primary, but then you want to get a second opinion on what you're doing. That might be a good time to engage with a financial planner.
Okay. Now, next question I have is, with Docs Outside the Box, obviously promoting living a non-traditional clinical path, doing things on your own. What's your definition as a financial advisor of financial independence?
Well, I really think of financial independence. I think of, being able to do what you want to do. So, I mean, if you decide that you don't like your job anymore and you want to go overseas and, volunteer with whomever for a couple of years, financial independence is being able to do what you want to do and not being tied down by, student loans or a really big mortgage or, something else or your lifestyle or feeling like you can't do what you want to do.
Okay. And obviously probably not having, or at least not being tethered or tied to getting money from their primary job, I guess, also.
Right. Yeah. I mean, financial independence doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could just be that, if you pay down debt and you kind of keep your spending in check, that it gives you more like flexibility to be able to do what you want. So it doesn't mean that you would have to like quit your job and go travel the world. It could mean that if you're an emergency room physician and you hate it, that you could essentially look at doing something else and not have to stick with the job that you hate just because it has the income that you need.
Right. Okay. Now, for the physicians who are coming out right now, those who are, finishing residency and those who are coming out of fellowship, obviously living as a resident comes with it, almost like a pauper status. What are some steps that they can take to make sure that they don't have what's called lifestyle creep, where they get their first bonus check or they get their first check as an attending. And obviously it's way more than what they're used to getting. And then as a result, their lifestyle kind of goes up and creeps up with that paycheck. What are some steps that they can take right now to prevent that?
Yeah, so a lot of that can be headed off by actually, like making some commitments while you're in residency. So an example would be to say, okay, for 2 years after I, get my real job, my big paying job, I'm not going to make any lifestyle changes. So, maybe I'm going to continue driving the same car. I'm going to, keep renting or staying in the same house that I am. Just kind of giving yourself a little bit of time to actually stop and plan for what's up ahead. And I mean, lifestyle creep, a lot of times, the worst thing that you can do for lifestyle creep is to already have a big debt commitment, but then take on a really big mortgage and like a car lease that's high or a car loan that has a really high payment. And then you're stuck. We're talking about financial independence. That is not financial independence. That's having really high bills that you have to continue to support because you committed yourself to them.
Oh, I can speak to that. So at my job, oftentimes I have other physicians who ask me or ask my wife, why don't we have a home right now? So right now we're just renting, but as you know, and I think as most people know, we have really high student loan debt. It's a 2-physician household, so you're combining, really large student loan debt, which is the equivalent of a house, basically. And that's how we look at it. We look at it as we already have a house, and when people ask us, they ask us and we tell them we're not buying a home until we pay off our loans. They look at us like we're aliens, like they've never heard of anything like that. It's very foreign to them.
Yeah. For a lot of people, student loans are like not real debt. Like they treat it as if it's not real debt. They're like, yeah, I make the payments on it, and you're like, well, what's your balance? I don't know.
Like it's just going to disappear in the cloud.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it is real debt. It goes into a lot of calculations for how much more you can borrow. And just because you can borrow more doesn't mean that you should be borrowing more. So I think, a lot of times, if people know before they get out of residency, they can kind of head that off and, pick the right friends too. I mean, if all of your friends are buying a $1 million house, you're going to be like, why are we buying a $1 million house?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about who you surround yourself with. I definitely agree with that.
Either that or decide ahead of time that you're just going to be like the poor one in your friend group.
I do think it's about understanding that basically all debt is bad. I mean, that was what I thought, going into college. I went to school, or I was going into college in the mid to late 90s. And I remember that notion of there's no excuse to not go to the school that you really want to go to, even if you can't afford it, because there's always a loan available to get you through that process. And I remember just basically justifying in my mind, like, this is like a mortgage. This is like a mortgage. This is a mortgage on my mind. But if you really look at it, I mean, it's not like you can trade it in, for some type of, financial gain. Like with a house, if I can't afford it anymore, I just sell it,
Right.
And I think understanding that it's just bad debt. And as soon as you get out, get it done as quick as possible. I think that's the best way to look at it.
You can't sell your med school diploma?
Nah, you can't even live underneath it. It can't keep you warm.
Well, I mean, for a lot of doctors and physicians, I mean, you can't go to school without paying for it, and med school tends to be one of the more expensive schools out there. So, I mean, I always tell people it's not like you can go backwards and try to work your way through med school. But at the same time, you have to know that kind of was your mortgage. That's your mortgage for what you are going to be making in the future. So that's your mortgage for being able to, essentially do what you love and make a good income at it. But if you then take that and say, now I make a good income, now I'm going to be able to leverage that to buy a bunch of stuff, you're kind of double leveraging yourself there.
Right.
So think of it that way, kind of make sure that you are online with paying down those student loans in like a reasonable time period. And 30 years is not a reasonable time period.
Not at all. Don't fall for that trap, y'all.
Exactly. By that time, you paid like 4 times as much as you would have if you had paid them in 10 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, can you give us, a good story? Because we love to hear stories on this show. That's what the show is all about. Can you give us a good story of what, a physician that you've worked with who's done really well? Or if you don't have one, can you contrast it or just give us a bad story of financial, failures with physicians?
Yeah. I actually work with a dual physician income. Dual physician couple.
Okay.
And I think that they've done some things really, really well. So one of the things that they have not done is they didn't get looped into the whole buy a bunch of financial products from random people that are hanging out in the parking lot at your med school.
Trying to buy you lunch.
Yeah, or pay for your drinks in exchange for sitting down with you. So they didn't do that. But for a while, they didn't really want to hire somebody. So they just kept bouncing ideas off of a friend. Well, the friend happened to be a certified financial planner, which is good. But at some point, he finally was like, you know what? You guys actually need to hire a financial planner. You can't have everything be the idea that you're bouncing off of your friend who happens to be a financial planner, but's not really in the details of all of your stuff. Because, the analogy is if you're talking to somebody at a party and you're a doctor and somebody's like, oh, you're a doctor? So I have this, whatever. And they start telling you all kinds of gross, random stuff that you just...
Check out this itch.
Yeah, exactly. That you did not want to know. And they're just like, so what do you think I should do? And you're just like, I don't know. I can't do a blood test on you. I can't check it out. We're at a party. So one of the things I think that they did really well was not to fall for kind of the hype out there. But one of the things that somebody else kind of had to push them to do was to actually fully engage with a financial planner.
Okay. Now, what about, do you have anything bad? Any bad stories?
Most of those come off of things that have been pitched to doctors that they then decide is a really awesome deal or something that's really going to solve a problem.
Should I chime in at this point?
You totally can. What have you been pitched?
I've been pitched cash value / universal life insurance. Everything that you said earlier in the interview, I've heard that. Variable annuities, all of that stuff. And this is being pitched, this product, after saying that, and I'm very open and honest. Me and my wife combined have about 600, close to 700,000 in student loan debt, and obviously that should be the priority among, above other things, but yet we still get pitched these plans. Yep,
exactly. So there's a lot of different things that are being pitched, but I mean, they can even go beyond traditional investments where somebody, might convince you that, well, you should buy this real estate property so that we can develop it, so that we can put medical offices in it. And then you'd be able to rent one of your own offices and you'd be able to actually make income off of it. I mean, all of that sounds great, but if you're a doctor, you are probably not a real estate professional, nor are you a real estate investor. And if you wanted to do that, maybe you should hire an impartial third party instead of reacting to somebody else telling you what a great deal that it is.
Well, there's the old adage: if it sounds too good,
yeah, exactly.
You may want to, step away or think about it twice.
Right. Yep. And I mean, really, the biggest danger in that is getting yourself into something that you're either losing your pants on or that you can't get back out of. Because a lot of the things that are pitched to doctors are things where you might not really have to pay for it up front, but then once you get into it, you cannot get back out of it for at least a couple of years. And that might be, forever.
Right. All right. Well, that goes on. This is going to move us into our next segment, which I want to call quick money definitions. Mm-hmm. So this is an opportunity for our audience members just to kind of learn, some of the jargon, some of the definitions that go with financial, certified financial planning, certified advice, but, they may not know exactly where to start. So I'm just going to ask you some questions and I just want you to define these products for us. Okay.
All right.
All right. So the first one is, what is a 401k?
All right. So a 401k, along with other retirement accounts, it's not actually an investment vehicle. I always tell people to kind of think of it as like an umbrella. All right. So you've got an umbrella and it's over different types of investments. So a 401k is an umbrella that is over, retirement accounts. So a 401k is not actually an investment. Within a 401k, usually you have mutual funds, but you could also have ETFs or stocks or bonds or, things that you shouldn't have in 401ks, like options and stuff like that. But it's always connected to an employer. So if you're self-employed, you could start up a self-employed 401k. But if you are a W-2 employee at a place where they don't have a work retirement plan, then unless you have income that's outside of it, you usually can't establish a 401k for yourself because it's an employer plan.
Okay. So 401k, you have to be attached to a job.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now, what does it mean to max it out?
So maxing it out means that you're putting in the maximum amount that the IRS will let you put in for that year. So the IRS essentially, they say at some point, like you can't put any more than this amount in per year. So for 2016, that would be $18,000. If you're 50 years or older, you actually get a catch-up contribution. Congratulations. So you can usually put in another amount on top of that. But maxing out means that you're putting in the maximum amount into that 401k.
All right. Okay. So I understand that. What is the benefit of maxing out your 401k? Or why would you want to max it out? Or even why should you use it?
Yeah. So there are several reasons that you would want to use it. The first reason is that you're actually saving up for your retirement or for your financial independence. The second reason is that if it's pre-tax, it directly reduces your taxable income. So, when you get your W-2, it'll actually say that your income for your federal taxes is whatever you made less whatever you put into your pre-tax 401k. So it's like the best way. I have people all the time asking me for like tax tips. And I'm like, tax tip is like put as much as you can into your pre-tax retirement plan. And they're like, that's not a good tax tip. And I'm like, it's better than any credit or deduction, really.
And it's free.
Exactly.
Okay. And I've heard of the match. I have a match at my job. Can you explain the match process?
Yeah. So usually employers will have something established where they might match the contributions that you make. So for example, they might say, if you put in 5%, we'll match half of that. So we might match 2.5%. So that means that you have to put in that minimum amount in order to get the employer match. And essentially it's free money. I mean, you get money on your money without having to wait, for the market to take off with it. So there's really not, unless you're really battling with like some credit card debt, there's not really a good reason to not get the match.
Right. And especially in a year like this one, or even last year where I think everybody got negative returns, getting that match is it's a huge boost to your account.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's essentially, so if you put in 5 and you got 2.5% matched, you just got, 50% return back on your money just by getting the match for the money. But I will say that a lot of people will just do the match and they're like, so that's it. Like I got the free money. And I have to remind them, like, that's not the end goal. The end goal is not to get the free money. The end goal is to have enough money to actually be able to do what you want to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what's the difference between a 401k and an IRA or individual retirement account?
Yeah. So a 401k is an employer-sponsored plan. So you have to have that attached to an employer. Whereas an IRA is an individual retirement account. So by definition, it's for an individual. It's not through a company. With a 401k, you have a maximum amount that you can put into it, and that's per year. But you usually are not disqualified from a 401k. Whereas with an IRA, there's a maximum amount that you can put in, and it's almost always a lot less than it is always less than what you could put into a 401k. And then in addition, if you make too much money as defined by the IRS, then they cut you off. You're not allowed to put into an IRA.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. So this is for 2016, but I have a handy dandy little chart that I usually keep really close to my desk. So for 2016, if you are filing jointly and you make 194,000 or more, then you're not supposed to put into a Roth IRA for that year.
Oh, to a Roth IRA. Okay, I got you. Got you. Okay, so a Roth IRA, that's something that we all want to know. So what exactly is a Roth IRA?
So you've got a regular IRA, and so that if you meet the qualifications, you can deduct it off of your taxes. With a Roth IRA, it's something where it's after tax. So it's kind of like the same as if you got money out of your paycheck and then you put it into a savings account. But it grows and you don't get taxed along the way, as you wouldn't get taxed with any type of retirement account. And then whenever you retire, you get to take that money out tax-free as long as you follow all of the rules.
Okay. So since you're using after-tax money, basically the tax amount that you've paid as you got your paycheck, that takes care of everything. That's the only tax you have to pay on it, provided you go through the hoops they want you to do.
Right, exactly. and I put that in there because it's like, people are like, well, I put my money in here and so I'm going to take it out when I'm 40. And I'm like, that's fine, except they're going to ding you because they, if you take out your earnings before 59 and a half, then you've got to pay the penalties and the taxes on it. But big picture, Roth IRA, it's really good for people, especially if they have, like 15, 20, 30 years until they're anticipating that they're going to retire.
Okay. So I'm going to take it now down to, because I think 401k and IRA, let's just say that's college level, I would say, right? Or you don't have to be nice. You can tell me if that's elementary or high school.
I talk to a lot of people who, it is funny. A lot of people will think that is a type of investment instead of a type of account. So, I would say that's probably college level.
All right, let's take it down to elementary then. What exactly is a stock?
So we're going to talk about like the super underlying. So I call these like the building blocks of investments. Okay. You've got stocks, bonds, cash, and alternative investments. So with a stock, essentially that is ownership in a company, in any company. So the underlying, it's being able to kind of get the gains of that company if it grows, or be able to get dividends off of that company if it pays dividends. So it's the ownership component of investments.
All right. Now, what is a bond?
So a bond on the other side is it's kind of like you loaning money to a company, and then they pay you an amount back, and it's usually an interest rate for you letting them borrow that money. But it's pooled together because obviously you probably couldn't personally loan a company everything that they needed to be able to operate. But while a stock is having ownership.
You don't know my financials, Katie.
Oh, my goodness. Maybe you guys do.
You're right.
But for the most part, stock is being able to actually have ownership of the company, whereas a bond is you owning a liability of a company, and they're paying you back an interest rate.
So a good example would be like, I guess, like if you live in a city and, for example, they want to build a new stadium, don't they take out, or the city offers a bunch of bonds, and that's how, like a sports team would be able to pay for a stadium is through bonds, and then that bond gets paid back to the city. I guess people who live in the city, is that kind of how it works? Or
yeah, exactly. So you'll see a lot of times like a municipality will take out some bonds. So I'm here in the Dallas area. So the North Texas Tollway might issue bonds out if they need to do like a road project, and then they pay an interest rate out. Or government, entities will do that, or companies can do that as well. So all of those can issue bonds.
And So it seems like after 2007, 2008, this whole notion of passive versus active investing has come to light, and it's almost like, two people at, one each end's corner of a boxing match, like who's going to win. So it seems like there is a lot of studies that are showing that passive investing is just as good as as active investing. Can you explain the difference and basically the philosophy of each approach?
Yeah. So passive versus active. Passive means that you essentially buy into like a mutual fund or an ETF or stocks or bonds, and that you essentially buy into different types of those different types of investments in the market, and then you kind of leave it alone. So that's the buy and hold strategy, is passive investing. As active investing is where somebody, usually not you, but it could be you, but usually people have like a money manager that will go out and do research and say, like, we project out that this particular segment of the industry is going to make more money than another segment of the industry. And so that, they might skew or they might focus on a particular industry or country or something like that. But they charge a premium for it because they're actually having to go out and do the work to actually find those investments. So that's usually the difference between passive and active. And you can also have the individual who thinks that their brother is really smart and that they should buy everything that their brother says that they should buy. I don't even know what I call that, because it's not really having a credentialed person that studied this for 4 years do it. It's like they're,
Is that like day traders?
That's probably day trading. Exactly.
Passive versus acting versus day traders.
Right. Exactly.
Now, with passive, that approach that you're discussing, that tends to have lower fees, correct?
Yeah, it does tend to have lower fees because a lot of times there are indexes that are created, and an index is created to follow along with what a particular segment of the industry is doing. So there doesn't necessarily need to be somebody doing a whole bunch of research there. It's just kind of tied to what certain things in the market are doing.
Okay.
So those are usually lower cost. Active, is usually higher cost because there's somebody normally doing the research behind the scenes of what to buy and what to sell.
Okay, so I'm going to put you in a scenario. You tell me if I'm dumbing it too down. So basically, if I'm sitting in the physician lounge, another physician comes up to me. He's like, "Look, man, I got this hot stock. You can't lose. Buy, buy." That is an example of. Is that more of an example of active investing, or do I have it wrong, or am I just dumbing it down too much?
So that's probably the example of the guy that just takes hot stop tips off of his brother.
Oh, so I'm in the day trader world. Then. Okay,
You're probably in the day trader world.
I'm way off. Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, active management is essentially trying to beat out the market, or trying to do research into different areas of the market to see if one is of a better value than another right now.
Okay. Now I guess this is going to be first grade. Compound interest, which I hear is our best friend.
Yeah. So compound interest, it's kind of funny because it's they always give you examples of compound interest in CFP or finance classes. But then again, you're like, what the heck these days would actually pay somebody, 7 or 8% every year? It's just not going to happen.
Those days are over.
But the theory of compound interest, I think, is still very relevant. And so that means that when stuff has an amount of time to be able to build, it's going to be able to get bigger and bigger and bigger, kind of on its own. So the whole theory of compound interest is that if you start investing when you're, say, 30 versus if you wait until you're 40, or, wait until you're 55 and then sit down with a financial planner and ask how you're going to retire in 5 years. The theory of compounding says that you essentially are able to, your money is able to grow more the sooner that it is invested into stuff. because it grows upon itself.
Got you. Okay. Now, what's your advice to doctors who have just heard this, our quick money definitions? They've heard this entire interview, and they're saying that, they're still scared or they're just nervous about where to start. They've seen the market and its downturns in January and February, even before that. And, all of this is just scaring them. And they just say, look, I'm just going to put my money under my mattress. I'm going to put it into a savings account and then kind of go from there. What's your advice to those doctors?
Well, mattress money is probably not making any interest. And since there's usually inflation over time, so stuff is going to cost more in 10 years than it costs now. You're actually losing money if you've got money under the mattress.
There's bed bugs there, too.
And there's bed bugs. And you know what? Your insurance company might not cover it if something happened to your house. And they're like, How can you prove that you had $50,000 stashed away in a safe under your bed? And you're like, well, no. With the bank, right now, interest rates are not all that hot. So it's not really a great time to be having something sitting around. Same deal. Like if inflation is growing, but your money is hanging out in a checking account making 0.05%, then you're not actually keeping up with inflation.
So doing nothing is actually just as bad as falling for someone who's going to give you really bad products or really bad advice also then.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you're probably at more of a risk of losing if you end up with bad advice. Okay. Like really bad advice, like putting you into like a risky real estate investment that everybody loses their pants on. But I mean, just sticking stuff into an index, like it might lose money one year, but most likely it's going to gain it back over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. So, I mean, if somebody can look at investing as it's not what you're going to do this year, like if you need money this year, if you're going to buy a house in 2 years or 3 years, like you should not have it invested in the stock market at all. So just kind of knowing your goals can help you to set those up as buckets. So, like money that you might need in 2 years, that could be in a separate savings account or maybe in a CD. Money that you're not going to need for like 10 years. So, maybe if somebody has kids and they're going to pay for college education, that would be in a bucket where it's more like intermediate. And then money that they don't need for quite a while, like for retirement. If somebody can wrap their head around, like, I've got different buckets of money for different things, I think that allows them to be able to, let go a little bit more, to know that the market's going to do what the market does, and we don't really have any control over that.
Got to diversify.
Right, exactly.
Well, it looks like we've made it pretty much to the end of this interview, unfortunately. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to hear more about your practice. I wanted the audience members to learn more about your practice and what's your philosophy with investing. Why should someone work with you? And basically, how can the audience get in touch with you? The stage is all yours, Katie.
Wow. I feel like I should like tap dance or,
you should tap dance, give us jazz hands.
Exactly.
Jazz hands. This is your opportunity, girl.
So my website is yourrichestlifeplanning.com. So yourrichestlifeplanning.com. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, I started my firm about 1.5 years ago. I'm a fee-only financial planner. I do really enjoy working with doctors and physicians. I find that a lot of times they're very passionate about what they do, passionate about helping people. And it's great to be able to feel like I'm helping people that are helping people. It's like, twice removed, but I can pat myself on the back.
We get the point. We understand.
Exactly. I do have a blog on there. So it's yourrichestlifeplanning.com/blog. I have a lot of articles on there. So we were actually talking about kind of the building blocks of investments. Mm-hmm. I have an article on there called Investing So Your Money Grows. And it actually breaks down all of the different parts of, like the building blocks of investment. So it gives a definition of stocks and bonds and cash, talks about differences between a mutual fund and an ETF. And that actually comes out in a newsletter. So if you're interested in getting that information, you can always subscribe to the email newsletter, and then you get it actually emailed over to you.
I will be sure to put that in the show notes, actually.
All right. Awesome.
Well, I guess that's it, Katie. We really do appreciate you being on the show. I think we're all that much better for having the chance to listen to you and your insight on finances and what we as physicians can do to kind of detach ourselves from the day-to-day paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. So thank you very much for your time.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to have to do this again.
Yeah, let's do it.
And that is it. Episode 4 is done. Finito. Make sure you go and check out Katie Brewer on her website, yourrichestlifeplanning.com. Once again, her website is yourrichestlifeplanning.com. Check it out to find out everything that she has to offer, including her blogs, sign up for her newsletter, or even find out about all the different services that she has to offer. Also, remember, I'd really like to hear what your reviews are for this different episode, okay? So send your reviews to Stitcher, send it also to iTunes. Remember, you could always contact me directly. You can hit me up on Twitter at DocsOTB. That's spelled at DOCSOTB. Remember also, I'm always looking for more people to be on the show. Send or nominate people. Send it to my email at docsotb@gmail.com. Also, don't forget the hashtag I'm not just a doc. Send that to me on Twitter. Okay? So until next time, guys, remember to always live outside the box.